I'm Marius Vexler, and today's performance from Poor Elected Official reminded me of a group project where no one read the assignment, muddled facts, empty phrases, and just enough feigned outrage to make it look sincere. But here is the thing, I did read the assignment, and I'm here to explain what they didn't subscribe. Subscribe now and follow along, because once we separate the noise from the news, you will see just how loud the silence really is.
With breaking Americans across the nation now gathering in the streets protesting aspects of the Trump agenda, these controversial ICE raids, and the extraordinary use of federal powers and even military to back up those raids. We see signs that these protests, many of them peaceful, will be intensifying over the course of the evening. But that is against this backdrop. The United States, sometimes armed with machine guns or weapons of war, in LA as part of the ongoing raids with ICE agents. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's DOJ is going forward on these plans to use immigration powers and other clashes over immigration to try to indict and imprison political opposition. There's a new indictment that continues the prosecution of a member of Congress, a big development that came in the New Jersey clash after they dropped the case against sitting Newark mayor. Trump's Pentagon chief was asked point blank about whether we are heading towards the kind of autocratic abuse of power that is not allowed in a democracy. Would he rule out the use of the military to arrest American citizens? And at least at a public rhetorical level, not. We will get into that. We actually have a very special guest coming up who was directly involved in that. But this is one of the times where there's a lot of news. And so before we get into more of the details of what's happening, we want to get out into the field where NBC's David Noriega is live outside the federal building in L.A. David?
Ari, hi. Yeah, I want to just show you where I am. When I talked to you yesterday at the end of this block, because the equivalent crowd from yesterday had already been dispersed by the LAPD. As you can see, we are directly in front of the National Guard troops that were deployed on Sunday and have been the pretty consistent target of protests. I want to walk you around so you can see a little bit the tenor of the gathering here. Today, it is completely peaceful, fairly festive, actually. And what I've noticed over the course of the last 3 or 4 nights, the number of protesters and the sort of intensity of their confrontational attitude towards law enforcement has been on the decline. Now, I attribute that pretty much entirely to the massive crackdown by local and state law enforcement, which has been sending out police officers in massive numbers and been pretty evident, instructing them to be very ready, very quick to use various less lethal force to, get under control and prevent these crowds from growing. But this is, I think, very far from over, Ari, and for exactly the reason you pointed out. These ICE raids that touched off this unrest in the first place are ongoing. Not only that, as of today, they seem to be intensifying in the LA area. We're getting early reports of ICE activity all over the city, particularly in areas around Southeast LA and in the eastern San Gabriel Valley. We've heard some reports unconfirmed as of yet, but we're working to confirm them, of raids, including in some sensitive locations like churches and mobile clinics. And Ari, over the weekend, we saw raids in a number of workplaces, which some of the people that I've been talking to out are open air workplaces, places like Kosh's and Home Depots, where ICE agents can easily access people without having to enter a premise. Significant because one of the ways, the tact that federal agents are using in these operations involving up heavily armed with special tactical units, covering their faces, not identifying themselves on vehicles, not answering questions when people ask them who are or where the people that they're detaining are going. And this is one of the things that's really striking fear into community. Not only that, Ari, but a lot of them who have been detained are still not located. I spoke, for example, to an organizer who works with car washers who told me that of the 26 people were arrested over the weekend at car washes around California, they have only been able to find 4, 2 of whom were already deported to Mexico. So this is very troubling for a lot of people who are concerned about due process violations, because what this means is these people are not getting out to attorneys, but also because it's like what is really striking fear into the heart of this community. A lot of use the word kidnapping to describe the way these people are being picked up. And last thing I'll say, Ari, from what we're hearing, a lot of the people who are being picked up are people who've been here for many years, in some cases often have U.S. citizen children, the sorts of people who work at places like Home Depots and parking lots, Ari.
Again, reporting from that flat point. Thank you very much. Today, Governor Gavin Newsom is formally sounding the alarm after going through several days of this clash with Trump. There can be politics, there can be posturing, but at the end of the day, we're talking about the sitting governor of one of the largest states in the country facing off against the sitting president as they debate the lawful use of power, including their joint authority over the National Guard, and now the means in the state of California. The governor giving this nationally televised address with a warning about the president.
This isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
The governor is saying the moment has arrived, and people can observe and debate how to make sense of all this. But just on the use of force, which is separate from debates about how to manage immigration or deport individuals here unlawfully, just on the use of force, what we're seeing is a president who over the weekend said that they needed to send in the Guard to restore order. It was that kind of requirement, and a basically amount of unrest or rebellion among people was the reason, has now very quickly accelerated into other operations. So we see photos now, you can observe this with your own eyes, the dramatic escalation of what is a quasi-military role in Los Angeles. Now remember, there is the Guard, then there are the Marines, but on the National Guard alone, we are seeing them in images sometimes put out by ICE itself. So this is part of what they want to boost, what they want people to see. The Guard is out on these raids with ICE, escorting agents, backing them up for arrests. Recall, that is different than saying that there was an emergent need for the Guard to deal with a weekend rebellion. Then you have these active duty Marines who are not trained for this. Pentagon officials, they will be providing security to agents as they do their work. If it sounds unusual to you or like something you've almost never heard of, that's because it is unusual. Indeed, the United States Marines are not a glorified security service for other domestic agencies, let alone Donald Trump or Stephen Miller's nation priorities. Over in the more Republican area of Texas, their governor will be activating the National Guard, citing the protests. There has been no reports of police dealing with violence out of control or the kind of incidents that would typically, over our nation's history, justify bringing in the Guard. Remember, the National Guard is not a first resort. And then there's the news I mentioned. Defense Secretary Hegseth grilled over the military deployments. He's under oath here on Capitol Hill. And while some of this may be a cross between dodging a question or trying to match the president's rhetoric, we are seeing, again, the normalizing or softening of the kind of lines that Pentagon chiefs in every administrative party would always be able to emphatically say, no, of course we don't use troops domestically to arrest American citizens, but yet here was the version of the answer today.
Are you prepared to authorize DHS drones and also to authorize military forces to detain or arrest American citizens?
Senator, every authorization we've provided National Guard and the Marines in Los Angeles is under the authority of the President of the United States, is full and constitutional. They are assisting in defending law enforcement officers,
so the answer is yes.
Facilities.
So the answer is yes.
The execution of their job.
The answer is yes.
In the city of Los Angeles.
That was the exchange. Senator clearly trying to draw the import of what sounds like them claiming they could have that authority. You heard it. The answer is yes. For the record, of course, you heard the response from the Pentagon chief, not ruling it out as was expected. He didn't use the word yes either, because that would still be quite a bridge too far. The raids and now the protests have swelled into something that is larger and beyond the city of Los Angeles.
When immigrant rights are under attack, what do we do?
Hundreds of protesters gathered near 3rd and L following federal raids at Glen Valley Foods.
The mother of 9-year-old Emerson Colindres sharing her plea.
Just that they let my son go. He's not a criminal.
Our business is struggling, make no mistake, but I still get to go home and give my child a hug at night. These do not.
And labor leaders have joined. The farm workers leaders have posted a video of California harvest being chased across fields by immigration enforcement, showing what some see as sort of a deliberate effort to terrorize or scare. Administration says, well, they are still enforcing the laws. If people are undocumented, they can be picked up. There are also signs of targeting children. In Florida, a Honduran teacher was, quote, removed from a foster home and handcuffed in shackles. And that's at odds with decades of child welfare practice in Florida, which is a conservative-leaning state. It also violates a 30-year-old rule, according to the Miami Herald reporting. The Trump administration also using this time and this moment to lean into a wider set of attacks. And I want to be clear about this. Federal authorities do enforce federal law. Immigration is a federal power. Indeed, Donald Trump and his aides are especially interested in it because, unlike many other places where there's a balance with the states, this is primarily a federal thing. But that does not mean that they usually send federal agents to run rampant off and chase anyone and everyone who might be undocumented, especially people who have never considered major targets or it's the United States, long-term workers, people who are communities, people who have no other offenses, minors, as the example we just showed you. And so what you're seeing, both an expansion against the target class, basically almost everybody who might be undocumented, which is different than usual, and then the aggressive attacks of the federal forces. The Trump administration appears to want to show people they can go military, that they can use military force, that the Marines are involved now. And is that beginning? Is it the middle? Is it the end? A lot of experts we're hearing from say this is not the end, that they will do this and then try to build on this. The governor of California is saying it's not going to be just his state. He doesn't have a crystal ball, but he clearly has been dealing with administration, has a sense of what they're up to, and is concerned, warning that we are looking at a kind of semi-autocratic or police state set of tactics. Now, those warnings in mind when you turn to what the administration is doing right now, when they know the visuals are out there, and they know there are the visuals of these federal agents, federal officers, National Guard, and some Marines in the streets, which definitely raises tensions. They're going forward on prosecuting a member of the opposition party who was part of the criticism of this very deportation policy, the Democratic Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. Now, she had an altercation with officers in an ICE facility where she said he and other officials wanted to do oversight. You may recall there was some back and forth. But she's now seeing 3 counts of resisting and interfering with federal officers. These could carry, if convicted, major prison sentences. And she is a member of the co-equal branch of government. And you'll note some of these offenses are kind of things that aren't some ongoing criminal conspiracy allegation. They just reflect her action with federal officials deployed by Trump, who on a different day might be defending her and other members of Congress. Now they've turned around and said, you interfered with a federal officer, you're going to be prosecuted. Many experts say this is not a case level. The case filed the same day against the mayor who was on this program talked about how it was baseless. They used a trespassing charge against him, and so weak and flimsy, it fell apart within 2 weeks. They dropped the case. This is the other holdover from that case. Indeed, the congresswoman was charged about a day after they took off the mayor's case. Critics say a clear effort to lean into this moment with people in the streets and federal agents in the streets to show that Trump means business, he will abuse power, that he wants to imprison opponents. And then you have even the comics getting serious. They are also sometimes the people who we look up to and see using their free speech, dissenting. But if a lawmaker who was elected, who's in a co-equal government, is not safe from prosecution, then what about the other independent people who are just dissenting in ways that we know Trump has attacked prior, including Kimmel, who Trump sees as a nemesis, and whose show, by the way, quite significantly is based in L.A., where so much of this is? Let's take a listen to him last night.
He wants there to be a war going on, and he doesn't care
who gets hurt in it. There's no riot outside. Putting out a fire you purposely start doesn't make you a firefighter. It makes you an arsonist with a hose. Trump is saying there are many fires he must put out. His critics say he's an arsonist. The Senate posed that important question to Pentagon Chief today. Jack Reed is here. We're going to get into that when we're back in 90 seconds.
Ness cited for his big date, but he's wondering.
What if a flaky plaque throws me off my game?
Ned knew he could treat differently.
Otezla is the #1 prescribed pill to treat psoriasis.
Dad?
Otezla can help you get clear skin and reduce itching and flaking. Doctors have been prescribing Otezla for over a decade. Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lip, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts.
With clear skin, Ned's movie night could be a great night. Live in the moment. Ask doctor about Otezla. Scan to learn more.
So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking about our honeymoon. What about Africa? Safari. Swim with hot air balloon. Lions growling and giraffes that come in through the window.
Wait, can we afford a safari? Great question. Everything takes a little planning.
Or put the money towards a down payment.
With enough room for a baby?
Babies.
Baby.
Let's take a look at those scenarios.
JP Morgan Management has advisors in Chase branches and tools Wealth Plan to help keep you on track. When you're planning for, the answer is JP Morgan Wealth Management.
We're joined now by Senator Jack, who is also a retired Army captain, served in the 82nd Airborne, and was questioning the Pentagon Chief Secretary Hegseth today. Welcome. What were you at in your line of questioning?
Well, thank you. What we were trying to establish is the fact that there is a strong constitutional barrier between the military acting as a force to defend the nation and as an internal police force. And what they're trying to do is gradually lower that barrier so that it becomes, quote unquote, normal that military people show up to enforce civil laws, that are out to protect police officers. But the police officers of Los Angeles didn't ask for the protection, and the ICE agents are trained and armed and capable of, I think, protecting themselves. So this is more of eroding an essential part of the Constitution, which is the military is designed to protect us from foreign adversaries, organized militaries, others, not as an internal police force.
President Trump has now deployed the Marines, and some of what they're doing, are they acting on an illegal order?
Well, I don't think so. I think basically you would need, I think, a complete breakdown in civil order, and probably, in most cases, the request of the mayor and the governor to do that. That's not the case here.
So just to pinpoint that, you think that the lack of that justification and no claim to the Insurrection Act means that Trump is giving them orders right now that are illegal, that are not justified?
I don't think they're justified. It would take a court to untangle the legality and everything else, but I'm certainly not justified by the facts around. This is not a situation where the violence, and I don't accept the violence, the burning of vehicles, the attempts to disrupt police operations cannot condone. But it certainly didn't reach the level where federal troops had to come in, as they are. And oh, by the way, the National Guard has at times and can be mobilized. But why are we bringing in Marines? These are regular forces who are designed to protect us from enemies, not to run through and protect courts in California.
If that's your view, you sit, as I mentioned, this co-equal branch. You have oversee of the military powers in the Pentagon. what's the consequence? Is there any effort to hold him in contempt or impeach? What else would you advocate doing if they've already crossed these lines, as you say?
Well, I think we have to make it very clear, as I told you at the hearing, that they are crossing these lines, that the American public has to recognize that their own ultimate safety is being jeopardized here.
Yes, let's say it's clear, Senator, then what are you doing about it?
Well, again, impeachment would have to begin with the House, and then would have 67 votes in the Senate. Given the political alignment now, that's not an option. The option is to go and raise this issue up so that people pay attention, or to diffuse the social media, just trying to describe this as a riot and the city's burning down and that these troops are sitting.
But is there anything else you can do? I mean, get it, because we got a whole team of journalists in our newsroom that's reporting on this, and a lot of what they've found matches what you referred to, including the lack of a predicate agency. Is there anything else you can do, though? I mean, you're here as a veteran and a top member of this key. Is there defunding? Is there anything that gets Pentagon's attention?
Well, what would get the attention of the Pentagon is, one, what we were trying to do today is answering to us, make sure that we get the facts and what we asked for. But two, yes, if we could defund activities, that is the battle we're going on now with the reconciliation bill. They have used swaths of money for immigration support via the Department of Defense. We are resisting that. You know, one of the other questions I asked is, who's reimbursing the Department of Defense for all the money you're spending on internal security? And frankly, they're not. DOJ spending money that we authorize and appropriate to defend the United States, not to enforce laws in Los Angeles.
Given your experience and your relationship, I think also across party lines and down into the, what's supposed to be the nonpartisan aspect of it, do you have the sense that there are concerns within the Pentagon, within nonpartisan military leadership about going down this road? It starts with 700 Marines, and then it's thousands, and then is it thousands in America? Is there concern in there? Do you know?
It is there, but I think what happened is because of the approach of many in the Pentagon, the political appointees, there's a real fear that to speak out would be to jeopardize their careers and everything else. That's unfortunately a fact of life. But I think there are many officers and senior commissioners who are concerned because, one, that's not that we're trained for. Two, that to go in and to, women and children and throw them in the back trucks or guard people doing it, that's not why they're in the service. There is that concern. But I think at this point, both their obligation to follow the laws until they're declared unconstitutional, and also the sense of this foreboding for fear that, they're taking names in the Pentagon. In the last Trump administration, we had people, military officers, who stood up, and the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Estes, said we can't do that. It's unconstitutional. They don't have those now.
No, they're gone, and they might have stood up. It's exactly what's happening right now, what you say, in your view, illegal, which is Marines in the streets of America. Senator Reid, having done the big questioning today from Services Committee, appreciate you making time for us tonight. I know it's been times in Washington. Thank you, sir.
This is authoritarianism in motion. Trump's ICE raids have crossed a line, turning peaceful cities into military zones. The use of unmarked masked federal agents kidnapping people without due process is not law and order. It's fear, it's abuse, and it's exactly what dictators do.
Continuing a tense time in the United States, let's go over the basics of what we know. Right now tonight, there are still thousands of national troops in Los Angeles. They were requested by the governor, the first time in over 60 years. This situation has occurred, a president sending in the Guard without respecting or collaborating local authority of the sitting governor. You may recall, for decades, if not longer, we've heard about federalism, states' rights, other ways that it's important to, in general, respect state authority. And if you're keeping track politically, it's something the right had long said about. This is an escalation by President Trump, and it's not happening in a vacuum. In Washington, Trump is barreling forward with this controversial plan for a military parade on Saturday, coinciding with his birthday. While politicians in both parties have long celebrated our military, our veterans, and we have holidays and many, traditional ways that we do that, this is an unusual bent, a different take on it that even Trump's allies would admit seem to be in the service of him, birthday, his personality, fusing his political quest as a non-patron, by the way, to tie himself, yoke himself to the deployment and the visuals of military power. In LA, we also have reports, given what's happening this week, more people are concerned inside the military. It could make it appear as if the military is now, quote, celebrating a crackdown on Americans, say veterans and Army officials. Again, if you want to listen to what veterans think, that's what some are concerned about. Others raising the alarm that Trump is now abusing an important power that presidents do have in real emergencies, but basically faking them, lying about them, or spinning them in order to seize emergency powers. On the immigration front, we know the Supreme Court already stopped that effort legally with regard to deportation. When it comes to the National Guard, though, courts rarely intercede in real time, and that means this particular emergency claimed out of California is the basis for what we see in the streets tonight. With history in mind, we want to turn to presidential historian Douglas Brinkley, professor at University, author of many books. Welcome. I want to deal with this as carefully as possible. If you want to be broad and historical, other presidents have trafficked in the imagery of the military. President Bush criticized at times for how he leaned into it during the Iraq War and got himself on a plane in a photo op. You can go back further. I'm sure you have better examples than me. So how different is this and how distinct is it? The Times reporting that many people inside the military and veterans draw the difference from photo op to Marines on the streets.
Well, I flash back to Detroit in 1967 when there truly was a riot there, blocks of the city being burned, and Republican Governor Romney, Mitt Romney's dad, asked he wanted not only the National Guard, but asked President Johnson to come in and help. So you saw the collaboration of a Republican governor and Lyndon Johnson. But there was no need to call in the Marines. This idea of the Marines coming in, that did happen in 1992, with the acquittal of Rob King. But that was a brutal situation going on there in the city. And the Marines, 1,200 were called in. Now Trump is using it in a really ugly and distracting way in Los Angeles. What possible reason are you putting 700 Marines standing around downtown LA? People are partying all around 2 blocks away, and it's not a rebellion. It's not a riot going on. There's some unrest. And we're in a camera age, so people are capturing everything. Anything, if an ICE agent oversteps a bound, they're going to be very likely captured unless it's being done in the dead of night. This is just Donald Trump trying to score points politically, beat up on the state of California, and start setting a precedent where the Marines are his sort of pretend police.
Yeah, and the deployments come with this wider crackdown. Prosecuting opposition party members, threatening to go after Elon Musk's businesses. Hey, even if you're an ally or a friend, you're not immune. We've seen other countries. And Musk now today backing down, basically saying that he went too far in the attacks on Trump. The Journal reports he's in retreat because he's called Trump advance. It comes after specifically Trump raised the possibility of abusing power, of targeting one individual for his free speech or criticism, and going after his business. I'm curious if you think history is a guide that not everyone gets the bayonet or the gun. Some people that might get threatened with arrest, but they're threatened with the kind of crackdown that affects them in business. Is that a way to understand this?
It really is interesting. I mean, if we go back to their robber barons, and with the Rockefeller squaring off against TR kind of tried to hold the Rockefellers by doing antitrust, by saying nobody's above the law or, rule and order. And now seeing Musk recognizing I'm just going to the ring of Trump because of the embeddedness of what Eisenhower had warned about as president of the industrial military complex. You have the technological order now married to the administration. One of the big stories in history of our time is how Silicon Valley has really moved to populist right, mainly because of they want they don't any kind of regulation in that industry, and is caught between a rock and a hard place, and Trump could have made his life just miserable for him. I'm here in Texas, and Musk is cutting all sorts of deals with Governor Abbott, and Governor Abbott's not real happy of this Musk versus Trump square off. So alas, he went groveling to Donald Trump. I'm sure Trump will never trust him fully again, but it doesn't mean he's going to give away the red tail either. So that Trump ended up this week in a deep hole with Musk. Horrible cycle for him, and now he seems to be turned it into a win for himself. But yet it's also a win for Newsom in the sense that finally a leading Democrat besides AOC Bernie Sanders seems to be voice of the resistant. Newsom is a thumbs up for the way he's behaved this week.
Right, and people are looking to understand where lines and who's fighting back. He's taking them to court, saying he's trying to do that, and it's up to the judicial branch to decide if it's going to act quickly. I've explained they often don't. Historian Douglas Brinkley, thank you for being here.
The Trump presidency is turning national defense into a birthday prop. A military parade, Marines patrolling LA, and disregard for state authority. This is not strength. It's narcissism weaponized. The military isn't his private militia, and veterans know it. The warning signs of autocracy are now blaring.
Protests continue against the military-style ICE raids. It's part of a broader Trump playbook to clearly stoke division over immigration from certain countries and race. His tactics have raised new questions tonight about equality, dignity in law enforcement, and human rights writ large, including how this resistance this time will respond. With some of that in mind, we want to broaden out right now, joined by a voice that many have come rely on for exactly these type of questions. Todd Coates is a renowned author. He's a veteran of the Atlantic. We're here today marking the 10th anniversary of what became a breakthrough memoir, Between the World and Me. It was released in 2015, hailed by figures like Barack Obama and Toni Morrison, celebrated around the world, translated into over a dozen languages, earning the National Book Award, adapted into an HBO documentary. The man behind those words and some of that life shared, Ta-Nehisi Coates, the acclaimed author, comic book writer, and public intellectual, is here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Ari.
The question I want to ask you about the immigration wars. Do you think this is something that, with everything that Black Americans have to already deal with, this is something that Black Americans should also see as part of their struggle, or do you see it as a divide and conquer thing?
I don't even think they should see it, but I think it is. It just is. Because there is no vision of Black liberation in this country that is true, that is durable, that is sustainable, that allows for degradation and the oppression of other people. I think the best Black struggle is MLK doing everything he'd done and speaking in this big, expansive way, about the liberation of his people and how that, all people. And then at the height of his power, looking over to Vietnam and saying, I will align all of my credibility, everything, because there is no way that my ethic of nonviolence and freedom makes sense. I allow myself to be integrated into the system that is right now destroying these people half a world away. I think that's us at our best and at our most courageous. And so I don't see a vision of a Black struggle that looks at folks being snatched, in front of a Home Depot where they're, looking for work, where they're worried about whether they're gonna, be able to see their kids graduate. And it's like, you know what, I need rest right now. I'm not dealing with that. I don't think that's true to the, I don't think that's true to the history or the best of the culture.
The book's turning 10.
Yes.
You're turning 50.
Yes.
What's on your mind?
We're all getting old. We're not getting any younger, man. No, we're not. We're not any younger. I'm sort of stunned, because and I've said this before, for books, people are introduced to them at their finished moment. But for those of us who write them, you begin with this kind of notion in your head and try to scribble it out. And so when I see Between the World and Me, I see all of my fears and my anxieties, starting it, and for most of the period of making it, thinking it really wasn't actually a book. That actually I was just kind of
What was it? It was like your notebook?
I intended it for it to be a book.
Yeah.
But I wrote Between the World and Me, 3-4 times, I think? I had 3-4 different drafts, and I had a great Chris Jackson, now at One World, was at Spiegel and Grau before that, who was is very, very exacting on the book. Wanted it to land with the kind of impact. There have been all this sort of comparisons, I think, in the year with James Baldwin, but I have to be absolutely clear. He functioned for us as a creative bar. And so I had this memory of reading The Fire Next Time when I was at Howard University, either my sophomore or junior year, I can't remember, and reading it all the way through and sitting in the library and knowing how much of an impact that had on me. And that's what we're consciously trying to do. We wanted people to read it and feel, like their world had been shaken by something, and to say that, I had that memory of my world being shaken by Baldwin.
I want to look at that decade from when the book came out and it had this breakthrough reception to everything we've been through. And our side here doing daily news, we hear a lot of narrative, a lot of where the energy, the mood, as they call it. And I notice often wrong, and in politics, deliberately so. The recent narrative around race in America at the political level is, things were overdone towards diversity, recruitment, DEI, civil rights. After George Floyd, there was an initial reaction about the fundamental killing, later adjudicated to be a murder, on video. But then it spread more widely to other reform. You referenced structural reform earlier. And it was interesting because for a short time, there were corporations going out of their way in public, say, hey, we're about this. They have completely backtracked on that. Many people skeptical at the time, but after the election, we have these headlines. These are companies that have sometimes very left-leaning bases, and some of them, I should say, in their core have diversity. Google's diversity hiring goals. Meta and Amazon scale back. McDonald's retreats from DEI. McDonald's, a very diverse working base. There was a time where they thought saying DEI was good, I guess, for that reason. Walmart, a largest employer, rolls back what were DEI programs after this backlash. What your work and the book tell you about that fake or moment towards DEI and brand, now a complete retreat?
These corporations have kind of moved where they were in 2020. I think they are of a larger, unfortunate trend in the boardroom, in higher education, in our business, in journalism, of what I can only term as just rank cowardice. And I've been surprised by that. I guess I shouldn't have been, and that is my naivete.
You watch Democratic presidents, including Obama, plead and cajole and ask corporate America to try various things, and they often are, whether that's healthcare cooperation or whatever. And in a short order, he's got everyone without a law passed backing off. How do you view that?
I just want to double down on this cowardice point a little bit, and I'll tell you why. It's not simply a retreat from DEI. It is the fact that what you have is effectively an immigration of television stars. People who are very good at commanding camera and commanding attention, to those. It's a mix of, reality stars, trolls, et cetera. And so it's not simply that you have scuttled, these programs, or in government that you fire a lot of qualified and overly qualified, I would argue, Black, brown, LGBT women, et cetera. It is that you have installed people who are mediocre and inadequate. And there are people who have fashioned themselves as, part of the leadership of this country. Once again, in the boardroom, in media, in university, who are watching this and are going along with it. They can't fight it. I mean, nobody is going to get out of this, unscarred. This is not, a situation in which black folks or minorities or whoever, are going to pay. Everybody is going to pay this. Everybody will pay for what RFK Jr. is doing. Everyone, public health will pay for it. And folks can't stand up. It's shocking. You know what I mean?
And do you think that's because so many people those folks you're talking about are in this somewhat white-collar positioning where there's capitalism and there's jobs, and they don't want to do anything that really endangers their way of life?
I guess the question I have now is, and I do mean this as a question, and perhaps, at some point I'll get investigated. I'm not a product of a particularly competitive, university system, or at least it wasn't seen that way at the time. It's become competitive. I'm not the product of Ivy Leagues, you know what I mean? And so I guess what I'm increasingly wondering is what would a value of being inculcated in these places? Like, where does this come from? Where does this notion of sort of saying democracy, but not really wanting to wage war on its behalf come from? Where does this, notion talking about how great America is until it comes time for you to lose your job over it? I don't quite understand it.
I think it's an important critique. I suppose one aspect is that people who are the product of those elite institutions don't see a life for themselves. They don't want to be in a mode not attached to something really important and elite. And so that they'll do their thing within. They'll publish this book or be involved in that symposium. They don't really want to do anything that risks the position. That's one part of it.
But they're not be attached to something elite anyway very soon. I mean, that's kind of like it's being degraded. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Ta-Nehisi Coates, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ari. Appreciate it.
What Coates says is damning and right. You can't claim justice for one community while turning your back on others. Black liberation, immigrant dignity, and human rights are indivisible. Trump's America wants division. But true progress demands courage. Courage that corporations, universities, and white-collar elites are too afraid to show.
Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our community. And that seems to be the entire point.
Governor Newsom making those allegations. The purpose of this crackdown in L.A. by the government under Trump, the AP reports the National Guard is detaining civilians in this new role. The military says the Guard will be holding those civilians temporarily and then handing them off to law enforcement, local law enforcement being the normal way any such legal issues are addressed. That update just came in. We wanted to report on that aspect. Be right back.
Governor Newsom is absolutely right. Trump's goal isn't protection, it's punishment. The National Guard detaining civilians on American soil, like some police state nightmare, isn't a response to unrest. It is the unrest. This is not democracy in action. It's democracy under siege. This is what authoritarian creep looks like. Not in some distant land, but right here on the streets of Los Angeles. Not in whispers, but in broad daylight, with cameras rolling and military boots marching past Home Depots and church steps. What we're witnessing is not about restoring order. It's about hijacking the very essence of American democracy and replacing it with a show of force, staged by Donald Trump and choreographed by fear. Let's be clear. Peaceful protesters took to the streets in opposition to ICE raids. Raids that are sweeping up dishwashers, farm workers, even worshipers at clinics and churches, because the federal government, under Trump's direction, has decided that military muscle should accompany immigration enforcement. And as if ICE armed with military-grade gear wasn't dystopian enough, we now have Marines on patrol. Marines in American neighborhoods, backing up federal agents who refuse to identify themselves, snatching people off the streets like we're in a bad Cold War spy novel. And in many cases, those arrested disappear. No access to lawyers, no contact with family, no answers. That's not law enforcement. That's state-sponsored fear. Governor Gavin Newsom is right to ring the alarm. This is not just a California crisis, it's a national crisis. Trump's executive reach over the National Guard isn't limited to one zip code. He's trying to set a precedent that the president can federalize force, bypass governors, and roll tanks down Main Street whenever he sees political opportunity in chaos. If democracy dies in darkness, it also chokes under camouflage and tear gas. And don't be fooled by the optics of Trump planning a military parade for his birthday. This isn't a celebration of service. It's a grotesque propaganda piece designed to conflate loyalty to country with loyalty to him. It's the image of a man obsessed not with duty, but domination. And while veterans and military leaders raise the alarm, reminding us that soldiers aren't riot cops, Trump pushes forward because he doesn't hear concerns. He hears silence and sees an opportunity. And the consequences? Congresswoman Monica McAuliffe, a critic of these immigration crackdowns, is now facing charges for trying to conduct oversight at an ICE facility. That's not just prosecution, it's persecution. It's targeting a sitting member of a co-equal branch of government. It's a message, dissent, and you might be next. Meanwhile, voices like Ta-Nehisi Coates draw the necessary parallels. You can't fight for liberation in one breath and allow the oppression of others in the next. Whether it's Black Americans, immigrants, or any marginalized group, the machinery of state terror isn't picky. It just needs silence to operate. And corporate America, elite institutions, and far too many so-called leaders have responded with silence dressed in cowardice. The playbook is clear. Trump stokes fear, manufactures crises, exploits federal authority, and criminalizes his opposition. He blurs the line between protest and rebellion, hoping that the average American won't notice the difference between restoring peace and initiating a police state. This is not just about ICE. It's not just about Marines in the streets. It's not just about prosecuting critics or silencing governors. It's about normalizing the abnormal, about testing how far a president can go before the system snaps, or worse, accepts it as the new normal. And if we let this moment pass unchecked, if we shrug and scroll past images of masked agents and detained civilians, if we accept the argument that law and order means unaccountable force, then we are complicit. This is not about partisanship. This is about power. And what Donald Trump is doing with that power should terrify every American who still believes in the Constitution. We said never again. This is what again looks like.